Have you ever believed that if you could just figure it out, you would finally feel safe? If you could just make the right decision and prepare for every possible outcome, if you could understand what the other person meant by what they said, or predict what might happen, make sure that nothing goes wrong, then you could finally relax. But what if the very thing that you are doing to feel free is actually just keeping you trapped? What if the overthinking, the preparing, analyzing, mental looping, the need to control every possible outcome is not actually creating safety? What if it is actually keeping you locked in the prison of your own mind? Because here's what I want to say today. You cannot think your way into freedom. You have to build safety from within. The inner controller, our inner controller, believes that if she can finally figure everything out, predict every outcome, prepare for every possibility, then you will finally be safe. But once again, overthinking does not create freedom. What it does is it just creates mental looping. It pulls you out of the present moment and it disconnects you from your body, your intuition, from your truth, and your ability to trust yourself. Now, the goal is not to make yourself wrong or bad for this or to shame yourself for overthinking, because we all do it. We all do it. The goal is to understand what the overthinking is trying to protect.
Hey, and welcome to Masks Off Inner Freedom for People Pleasers and Perfectionists. This is a podcast for those who are tired of holding it all together. I'm Kim Gross, your host, and if you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but still feel anxious, disconnected, or quietly burned out, you're in the right place. Here we talk about the patterns you don't even realize you're living inside of: self-abandonment, over-functioning, chasing approval, and mistaking productivity for your worth, and more. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to perform, perfect, and please to belong. Each week, we'll slow things down. We'll unpack the nervous system, the inner critic, and the subtle ways that you learned to disconnect from your true self so you can stop living from pressure and start living from presence. This is your space to take the masks off, so let's begin.
Today, I'm closing out the month of June, which is where I have talked about the inner controller the whole month. We talked about how the inner controller can keep you caught in the prison of people pleasing and how it can keep you caught in perfectionism, override. We talked about worry, rumination, and also the need to manage how people perceive us. And today, what I want to focus on as I close out the month of June by bringing it all together is to talk about one of the most exhausting prisons that the inner controller keeps us in. And that prison is the prison of overthinking and control. And I can say from my own personal experience of years of being caught in overthinking that it absolutely feels like a mental prison. And it is exhausting when you get caught in this place of looping in your mind. It's the part of us that says, oh my gosh, I need to figure this out. This is a problem. I need to prepare for every possible outcome. What if something goes wrong? What did they mean by what they said to me? Oh my goodness, is that a really bad thing? What should I do? What if I make the wrong decision? What if I can't handle what happens? What if? What ifing is a sure sign of being in a place of fear and then going to a place of overthinking. And so, if you are a people pleaser or a perfectionist, high achiever, someone who feels deeply, if you're a parent, oh my gosh, if you are a parent, even a partner, an entrepreneur, or someone who has learned to survive by staying 10 steps ahead, then this episode is for you. The inner controller is not trying to run our lives. She really isn't. She's trying to protect us. And it's really important to clarify that our inner controller is not a bad thing. And we do not want to make ourselves wrong or bad because we have a strong inner controller. But she does believe that if she can anticipate every problem, prepare you for every possibility, prevent every mistake known to mankind, then you won't have to feel pain. You won't have to feel rejection. You won't have to feel disappointment, grief, fear, uncertainty, or above all else, vulnerability. So, what does she do? What does our inner controller do? She keeps us thinking, she keeps us analyzing, like over analyzing everything. She keeps us replaying conversations in our head, rehearsing what we're going to say before having a very hard or difficult conversation. She tells you that it's your responsibility to take care of everything. She keeps you scanning for what could go wrong, scanning people and scanning an environment. Sometimes, yes, thinking is useful and planning is useful. Reflecting is useful. Just taking a sip here. Making thoughtful decisions is useful. But here is the difference between really solving a problem and trying to mentally escape an uncomfortable feeling. So, what is the difference between thinking and overthinking? Thinking helps us to move forward because when we just are thinking, we're often in action mode and we can solve a problem. But overthinking keeps us stuck. Thinking is connected to taking action, finding clarity on a situation, and feeling grounded in decision making. However, overthinking is very repetitive, it's urgent, there's fear based, and it rarely ever brings you any sense of peace. That's a big distinction between thinking and overthinking. Thinking also says, what is the next honest step? What's the next right step? What's the next breadcrumb? But overthinking says, well, what if I get everything wrong? And what if everything falls apart? What if the shit hits the fan, if you will? Thinking says, what do I do right now? What do I do in this moment? What's the next step? Overthinking says, but what if there is something that I don't know? What if I don't know what to do? Again, what if, right? And what if almost always points to the place that we're in a position of lack and scarcity and fear. And yet, thinking allows space. It feels different. The energy feels different when you're in a thinking place versus an overthinking, because often overthinking creates this pressure because there's such a sense of urgency, like, hurry up, we have to figure out a solution to the problem. Whereas thinking helps us to slow it down and helps us to respond. Again, while overthinking keeps us reacting internally, even when nothing's actually happening in the present moment. So, let me share some examples. This shows up for me often with my kids, and my kids are now 27, almost 27 and 24. And as a mama bear, I do tend to go to the place of wanting to protect. And I absolutely can go to this anxious worry place. In fact, I've gone to this anxious worry place so many times with my kids that they now have the words for it and they feel it when I'm in that place, and they will call me out on it. And they will say, Mom, you're in anxious worry right now, or you're in anxious fear. And most of the time, and especially in the past, they were almost always right. Because if they were making big decisions for themselves, I would think about all the possible things that could go wrong. Now, let me be clear and say that sometimes as parents, our gut sense is spot on. Our intuition can be spot on. We have lived a lot of experience. And having that experience gives us hindsight 2020. We can see things a little bit more clearly and from perspective, as opposed to how our 20-year-olds or even teenagers can see things, because they don't have the wisdom that comes from that lived experience. So let's just say, let's put that on the table. But the difference is, and this is what I'm trying to say about the difference between thinking and overthinking, there is a difference between when I'm worrying and I'm in fear place. I can feel the energy. The energy feels different because there's this sense of urgency, as I said, and I'm overthinking it. Versus if I'm just wanting to think about potential outcomes, I can share those thoughts with my son or my daughter. I can present it to them once and just say, hey, I don't know if you've thought about this, or this is something that I've been thinking about in terms of this decision you're trying to make. And you do as you wish with it, but I just feel like I want and need to share this with you. And then share it and then let it go. But if I continue to come back to it over and over and over again, the fear, if I continue to stay in worry or fear or lack or scarcity, then that's me being in my overthinking mind. And my inner controller is trying to protect me because she doesn't want me to feel the discomfort that could come with either my son or daughter facing a negative outcome to the decision they're making, or if they face some type of adversity. I don't want them to feel that pain. And as a mom, while they were growing up, I always tried to prevent that for them or protect them from that. But that's not life. That's not life. That's not reality. That was and is my inner controller trying to protect me from dealing with my kids being in pain. Does that make sense? So, again, to just kind of land the plane, overthinking is often just an attempt to create some type of certainty. And at the end of the day, we cannot have certainty. Being vulnerable is accepting the fact that there is no certainty. And because uncertainty can feel terrifying to our nervous system, especially if you grew up in believing that safety came from being a good girl, from being prepared, from being perfect, from keeping people happy, or staying in control. If you grew up in that type of environment, the mind is trying to create certainty for you. Your inner controller, she's trying to continue to protect you by creating that certainty. So what does she ask? What are some of the things that she says in terms of trying to be prepared? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if they're mad? What if I disappoint them? What if my child struggles? What if I fail? What if I get sick? What if I'm not ready? What if I can't handle it? And that's a big one. That is a big one for me, is what if I can't handle it? Having certainty is not the same thing as having safety in our lives. You can have every detail planned out for something and you can still feel anxious. You can have reassurance and still need more reassurance. You can have people in your life tell you that everything is okay, that they care about you, they validate you, and you can still feel anxious and feel like there is not enough reassurance. You can make quote unquote right choices and still feel afraid. You can prepare for every possible outcome and still not feel free. Because the deeper question is this: not how do I control everything so that nothing hurts? The deeper question is, can I trust myself to handle whatever happens? Can I trust myself to meet the moment? Can I weather the storm? Can I stay calm in the midst of a storm? I'm always trying to teach that point. I'm always trying to do that more and more for myself. Even with the girls, the young 20-year-old group of girls that I help teach and talk to about these concepts, they will be able to weather the storms in their lives. They will be able to stay more calm and grounded in the midst of a storm. That is freedom. That is freedom, not because life is now all of a sudden predictable, because it will never be, not because people won't disappoint you, because they will, not because your child will never struggle, because they absolutely will, and not because your body isn't going to perhaps fall apart, because it will, and not because your relationships aren't ever going to trigger you, because they will, but because you become someone that feels safe inside your own skin. You become someone that you can come home to. You become the safe space. You become the loving adult. And you become the one who says, I'm here. I can do this. I can be with this. I don't have to abandon myself. I don't have to figure everything out right now. I just need to take the next step. And I'm telling you, that is such a practice. It is not easy to do. I promise you, it's not. And I know that you know that because you may have tried. And then 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, you find yourself back into the loop or the pattern of overthinking. And it's okay. That's okay because we are human. We're not going to do this perfectly, and it will take time to cultivate this practice of learning how to show up for yourself, how to be there for yourself, so that when the storm comes, you will feel like you can meet the storm, you can weather it until it passes. And I have been really intentional lately about practicing this for myself. So, as many of you may know, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, and if you have, thank you so much for being such a loyal listener, follower. And if you're new to this podcast, welcome. I'm happy to have you here. And one of the things that I share often is that I have an autoimmune disease. And then on top of it, I'm now 57, almost 58. And I don't know if it's really from my age or if it's from the autoimmune disease or is it from genetics. I don't know. But honestly, I feel like every freaking day I am dealing with a different health issue, a different symptom, a different problem that is coming up. And thank God I have done the work that I have done to be where I am, because if this was a year ago, even, I would be panicking way more than I am. I would be in such a state of lack and scarcity and fear, worry, and anxiety. Now, I'm going to be 1,000% honest. I'm not saying that I'm completely free from feeling fearful or worried about some of these flare ups or some of these symptoms that are being persistent. But what I can say is that the dial is turned way down. And I'm not giving up or giving in, but I'm at the point of I'm just accepting. I'm letting go of an expectation that my body needs to be perfect, my health needs to be perfect, or things need to be a certain way. And the reason that I'm doing this is because my inner controller is settling down. She's not feeling as hypervigilant. She's not feeling the need to be looking out for every possible thing that could go wrong with my health. What if this? What does this mean? What does that mean? Oh my God, I feel this pain, or I feel this, or I have this issue. What does all this mean? Does it mean it's cancer? Does it mean I'm going to die? She's quieting down. She's settling down. And it doesn't mean that I'm not still going to do the things that I do to take care of my body, to take care of my health. I still will, but without the sense of urgency, without the anxiety, without the need to control the outcome. And so I share that story with you to say that it's never perfect, but we can quiet our inner controller by creating more inner safety. And therefore, if the storms become stronger, more violent, more frequent, then we can handle it. I know that I can handle what comes my way. I have survived so many things as it is. I shared before on this podcast that when my daughter was born almost 24 years ago, I almost died on the table from hemorrhaging, and I got through it. However, at that time, I didn't have the skills that I have today, so I was unable to provide safety for myself. I was unable to support myself, show up for myself, and just let myself know that I was going to be okay. I didn't trust myself or the people around me because I had so much fear, so much anxiety. So, the point that I'm really trying to make throughout this whole episode is that you and I cannot think our way into freedom, because it's not just about changing your mindset. That can help, that can be part of it, but it's not about just changing it. I couldn't tell myself years ago, Kim, don't worry about it. Just, you're going to be fine, or you're going to get over this. I couldn't do it because I abandoned myself left, right, and center all the time. And I was able to cultivate a practice of where freedom is now possible because I have this sense of safety. And freedom lives in our body. I was able to create that because I settled my nervous system. I know how to show up for myself. Freedom happens when our nervous system begins to believe that you are safe to be here. You are safe to feel your feelings. It's okay. It's safe to feel your pain. You will not die from feeling your feelings or from going through the pain that you have. You have to go through it. You can't go around it. You can't go over it. You have to go through it. And I say that all the time. Freedom is when you learn that it's safe to not know everything. It's safe when you can't predict the future, or if you don't have all the answers. It's okay. It is really okay. When my daughter was making a decision over a year ago of whether to go to California or not for her internship, I thought I had all the answers. I thought I knew what was best for her. And I was trying to predict the future with all the possibilities of what could go wrong. But the truth was, I did not know what was best for her. It was truly between her and the universe. I did not know. And it was okay to not know what is best. It's freedom is also when we feel safe enough to know that we can be imperfect. We do not have to be we're not perfect. And to let ourselves know that it's okay is what creates more freedom. So it's important to understand that if you simply just try to tell yourself, stop overthinking, stop ruminating, stop being that way, that rarely ever works. Because the overthinking isn't what the real problem is. And if you just try to shut it down, it's going to persist. The overthinking or the overthinker is a protector. It's a protector part. So it's trying to keep you from feeling, it's trying to keep you from the possibility of a wound or a memory or an old belief system that says you won't be okay unless you're in total control. Talking about the mental prison, then, the mental prison or being in the prison of overthinking says and tells you that you have to know, you have to be certain, you have to get it right, you have to prevent making mistakes, you have to make sure that no one is upset, you have to stay in control in order to be safe. But freedom says that you can take a pause, you can breathe, you can listen, you can feel, you can take one step at a time, you can trust yourself, you can be with uncertainty. You can be with the uncertainty, and you don't have to have everything figured out right now in this moment. As I say it to you, I'm feeling like, oh my God, I'm feeling a pit in my stomach because I know how hard it can be to be in this place. But when we can be in that place and have that freedom, there's so much inner peace that follows. And it feels so good. It feels so good to have that inner peace and that freedom and to let yourself out of the mental prison of overthinking, worrying, ruminating, feeling anxious, feeling scared. It's so much better when you can set yourself free. This is the shift from the inner controller to inner safety. This is what I mean when I talk about going from prison to paradise. And I want to emphasize and reiterate that when I talk about paradise, I'm not saying that life is perfect. I've already said that I don't do it perfectly. I'm not there 100% of the time, nor will you, nor is anybody ever there 100% of the time. The paradise is just about the inner freedom to be fully yourself, to be your true self. And again, that's what my entire book is about. It outlines how to be free to be your true self. It is a pathway to inner liberation. And in the book, I share my journey of how I went from victimhood, how I went from being in the mental prison, doing the work over years to be able to be in a place where I have more peace and more freedom. And that's my wish for you. That is my desire for you. I have a practice then for you.
Before we keep going, I want to take a moment to share something really close to my heart. If you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, wow, this feels familiar, the people pleasing, the perfectionism, the constant self pressure, I wrote a book just for you. It's called Free to Be, A Pathway to Inner Liberation, and it's part memoir, part healing guide. I share my own journey of learning how to stop living in victimhood, take off the masks, and come home to myself, but not by fixing myself, by understanding my patterns with compassion. This isn't a book full of fluff or quick fixes. It's honest, it's grounding, and it's for anyone who's ready to live with more peace and freedom. You can find Free to Be on Amazon. And if the book resonates with you, I would be so grateful if you would take a moment to leave a review. Even a few words can really help others to find it.
The next time that you notice when you are spiraling, you're looping, you're analyzing, you're trying to figure it all out, I invite you to pause and ask yourself, am I trying to solve a real problem or am I trying to escape an uncomfortable, difficult feeling? That one question alone can create so much space for you. And then, if there is a true problem that needs to be addressed, that needs to be solved, you can just ask yourself, what is the next step? What's the right next step? From a grounded, centered place. And if you notice that you are trying to escape a feeling, then You can take one hand, place it on your on your heart. You can place a hand on your belly, and you can simply just say to yourself, I'm here. I am here. I can be with this. I do not have to figure everything out right now. May I be peaceful. May I be peaceful. May I be free. And you can ask yourself, what am I afraid would happen if I stop trying to control this? What am I afraid would happen if I stop trying to control this? Or what am I not trying to feel? And again, like I said in the very beginning of this episode, we're often trying to avoid a really painful, difficult feeling. It could be we're trying to avoid rejection, abandonment. Maybe we just don't want to feel the pain of watching a loved one go through something difficult, or worried that somebody we love is heading down the road of suffering and misery. And so we're trying to prevent that from happening so we don't have to watch it. We're trying to rescue somebody from pain. And then you can just gently, again, remind yourself and say, I may not know exactly what's going to happen, but I can trust myself to weather the storm. This is the work that I do, and this is the work that I love helping other women to move through. Like, I love nothing more than helping others to understand these patterns and how to shift out of them, and not by forcing themselves to stop overthinking. It's not you can't force anything, and not by shaming themselves or making themselves wrong for wanting to control. It's so normal. And not by pretending that it's easy work. I've said that many times already in this episode. It's not easy. But by understanding, I help them to understand what the overthinking is protecting, learning how to create the safety from within, helping her inner controller to soften, helping her to come back to herself, because freedom does not come from finally controlling every part of your life. The freedom comes from knowing that you no longer have to abandon yourself when life feels uncertain. So, as I close out the month of June on the inner controller, I just want to leave you with one final thought. If you are overthinking, this is not some kind of proof that something is wrong with you. It is just actually showing or pointing that a part of you has been working so hard to keep you safe. But you do not have to live in a mental prison of looping forever. You don't have to figure out everything before you're allowed to rest. You don't have to predict every outcome before you're allowed to feel peace. And you definitely, certainly do not have to control everything in your life before you're allowed to trust yourself. You can just begin right here, right now, one breath, one pause, one moment of coming home to yourself. And one final simple reminder. You may not know exactly what will happen to you in the future, but trust that you can handle it and you can show up for yourself when that moment comes. because that, again, is where the freedom begins.
As we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say thank you for being here and for taking this time for yourself. If this episode resonated with you, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the podcast or leave a review. Even a quick star rating helps more people find this space and reminds the algorithms that these conversations matter. And I'd love to hear from you. If you have a question, a takeaway, or something that came up while you were listening, leave a comment or send it in. Let's keep the conversation going. This podcast isn't meant to be a one-way street. It's meant to feel like a community. If you want to learn more about me, my work, or the ways we can go deeper together, you can visit my website. All the details are there. Until next time, take a breath, take the mask off, and be gentle with yourself. I'll see you soon.